Today's talk is titled, Does Our Forest Have a History? To be delivered by Wayne Attoe. Wayne's career has been teaching. He worked in architecture and has written books, architectural books, writing and building. His most recent books are Cambria in the Images of America series of Arcadia Publishing and A History of Green Space, the Cambria Land Trust. He moved here in 1993 with Peter Frith. In 2008, they were possibly the first same-sex couple in Cambria to be married. Wayne joined the Green Space Board in 1996. Please welcome Wayne.
It's nice to be back, standing tall. Does our forest have a history or a story? We'll find out. You know what the answer is. Monterey pine and oak forest spread along the coast here from north of what we know of as San Francisco and down to what we know as San Diego. That was tens of thousands of years ago. Humans appeared in the forest about 10,000 years ago. Chumash and Salinan people tended the forest almost like a garden, producing food, medicine, materials for tools, shelter, and rituals. Grinding mortars like these are found in the area, and they were used to process corns into mash, which was leached and cooked. 250 years ago, the first expedition of Europeans came through the area seeking a land route to Monterey Bay. They camped near the site of our current high schools. Let's see if I can make this work. This doesn't reflect off the screen. So down just below the center, you can see Coast Union High School. And then below that, you can see Santa Rosa Creek. And it was there that the first Europeans camped. Native people gave them forest-sourced food, including Attoe made of acorns, and also fresh fish. Wrong one. A bit earlier, Europeans traveling by sea had arrived at Monterey Bay, and they noted unfamiliar looking pines on shore. A sailor drew this view up on the top on the right from his ship. Europe in those days was an age of identification and classification, and specimens of these trees were sent to England, where a taxonomist named the species Pinus radiata, which refers to the whorl on the cone. In America, people came to call them Monterey pines. Once Europeans had trod on this new to them land, they figured it was theirs. Don Juliano Estrada's claim for land included a visual depiction. When you wanted to claim land, you had to produce an image of what it is you expected you were getting. 13,000 acre Rancho Santa Rosa. This drawing in the middle there is possibly the earliest depiction of our forest. It's an adaptation of the drawing that Estrada submitted. Oh, and well, I can't, well, you see the trail crossing Arroyo Santa Rosa? Well, right now we're located a little over there to the left from that. The forest was harvested. It provided a bounty of timber for European settlers, but it was more akin to gleaning than gardening because gardening requires a reinvestment. Land was subdivided and sold to settlers and speculators. Everyone who had plots along the newly laid out streets needed lumber. And here, this is on the Phelan Ranch, logs being taken to a sawmill, of which there were 3 here. So they were harvested here, but they were planted there. Pine seeds were taken from to Australia and New Zealand, where scientists were seeking a tree species to grow for lumber and pulp in the southern hemisphere. A suitable native species for those needs didn't exist in the southern hemisphere. 50 years later, one seed source at a newly planted plantation near Auckland, New Zealand, was recorded as being from Santa Rosa. Now, 150 years later, millions of acres of Pinus radiata are grown and harvested on plantations throughout the southern hemisphere. It's kind of an industrial scale of gardening, I guess. Because genetic monotypes have been developed for use in those plantations, the genetic diversity of the Cambria Monterey pine forest would seem important to conserve. For special community occasions, like the Swiss-Italian heritage celebrations, folks took to forest settings east of town, including one called Phelan's Grove. Logging of the forest there had cleared enough land for horse races, rodeo events, and baseball games. Yet the forest still provided shade for picnics, barbecues, and concerts. On the left is a king and queen from Swiss-American days. Up on the right, this is the daughters, the native daughters group at Phelan's Grove. And lower right, the horse-drawn wagons processing up Bridge Street to the Grove added ceremony to these occasions. And Bridge Street is named that because you see it just to the right of all the horse carts, those bridges leading to buildings. That's an active waterway, still is, but it's underground now. So everybody had a bridge, and it was named Bridge Street. And the forest experience had a price. 1927, the Cambria Pines Development Company bought large forested areas abutting the village of Cambria. Lots and houses were marketed as a resort development and for second homes. Cambria Pines by the Sea, a slogan, was originated at that time. And the local newspaper, which helped promote sales, adopted a log-inspired typeface. I'm not sure that the word mentor is quite right here. Let me know. For 7 decades, the Cambria Forest it hosted both young and old at camps, including Camp Ocean Pines. Some of the cabins there were built with timber and siding milled from wind-felled trees on the property, including the beam, which you see being erected there during construction. Bunk beds, this is interesting. Bunk beds in some of the cabins were crafted using plywood from Chile that had been made from Pinus radiata trees, which had been introduced there for use in its lumber industry in the 1940s. And the forest at risk. Following the Santa Barbara oil spill in '69 and other disasters at the time, action was triggered throughout the country. San Luis Obispo County developed plans for the Cambria area, quote, assuring the protection of coastal resources such as wetlands, coastal streams, forests, marine habitats, and wildlife, including threatened and endangered species. The United Nations at the time, in a report, called Monterey Pines a world genetic resource. The Land Conservancy of San Luis Obispo County and Greenspace, the Cambria Land Trust, both were founded in the late 1980s. And 1986, the pathogen pitch canker threatened California's forests. It came here from the American Southeast forests. Foresters from New Zealand visited Cambria to learn firsthand about pitch canker disease. And here you see Rick Hawley giving them a lesson. Reportedly, the Kiwis, when they returned home, ditched their clothing here. And the forest is being protected. As parts of the Cambria native forest were being transformed by real estate development, state agencies began conserving land here for use as parks. San Simeon State Park was notable. Locally, forest and open space conservation increased through efforts of numerous nonprofit conservancies and state agencies. And now over 60% of the area surrounding Cambria is protected through public or nonprofit ownership or with conservation easements. For example, the 800 acres of forest on the Covell Ranch are protected with an easement held by the Nature Conservancy. So this is a very dramatic map. And everything that's colored in boxes is protected land, protected in one way or another. I can't point them out, but the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve is the pink toward the low middle. Down here in the low right, the bright green, that's Strawberry Canyon, and the Fitzwater property, they're closer to the highway. And well, anyway, that number, over 60%, is gratifying, but we're not done. The Cambria forest became fragmented in the last 90 years, though some portions, like Strawberry Canyon, are largely untouched and provide wildlife corridors to other native stands, like the San Marino Ranch and Camp Ocean Pines. In developed areas, the county requires that trees that are removed be replaced. I think it's 4-to-1. And Green Space supports that program by making seedlings available for that purpose. A bolder Green Space vision is to expand the forest beyond the urban service line, where it wouldn't be in jeopardy of development. Currently, GreenSpace has a multi-year reforestation project, which Ted referred to, out at San Simeon State Park, where we've planted 6,000 of the 10,000 tree goal, and we'll be planting another 1,000 in November. And then we are planning another 10,000 tree program. Up there on the right, Jason Anderson grew hundreds of seedlings for us in his backyard. He was partially blind, and this was an activity that he could do and enjoyed. And down below, we see a family planting out in San Simeon. And the forest has become a learning laboratory for teaching ecology with infield learning by doing experience. And that goes from preschool through to college level. The Harold J. Miosi Charitable Trust is a sponsor of our education program. So down on the left, you see a class of Cambria school kids being introduced to experiments by GreenSpace staff and volunteers. And on the right, this is the plant science laboratory at Cuesta College North, where Rick and Dr. Bob Chukowski made presentations, and the students there now are growing another 500 seedlings for us. And then they all come out to help plant too. So last year we had 94 people planting. It was meant to be a 2-day project. Took 6 hours. So does our forest have a history or a story? Well, it's been tended like a garden, divided into parcels that were owned by Europeans. It's been harvested for building materials, cleared for agriculture, animals and crops, sent overseas for a life as a crop, divided and thinned so that humans could inhabit it, romanticized to attract visitors and residents, conserved as nature, and used as a locale for learning. You can learn more about any and all of this at Greenspace website and email to info. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, let's do it now. No, he wants to do it now, yeah. We want, Wayne, we have time for Q and C now. It's better to do it before we hold hands, so.
Okay.
There you go. I have a question.
Yeah.
What was that big purpley colored plot of land?
That's Covell Ranch.
That must be nice. Wow. Huge, bigger than Fiscalini?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
What about the yellow one? The yellow.
The yellow one up toward the top, it's kind of gold color. That's a conservation easement held by the Land Conservancy of San Luis Obispo County. Oh, yeah, up there, right.
With the project in the yellow, obviously that's what I was talking about before. But you mentioned another 10,000 tree project? Where would that be located?
I don't have an answer, but we're making a vigorous effort to find public, private, conserved land. So we're confident.
The land that is near Strawberry Canyon, south to Camp Ocean Pines, all that wooded area that's west of Top of the World neighborhood.
Yeah.
Who owns all that?
Well, Strawberry Canyon is kind of like in the middle, and that's the bright green. The periphery along the streets is divided up, and much of that has housing on it.
No. South of Strawberry Hill, going up the hill, and then west of there.
Okay.
Between the houses and
Yeah.
Camp Ocean Pines.
Okay, there's a big, I think it's 5-acre home site, but Rancho Marino comes up and abuts, and Camp Ocean Pines. Oh, and there's a Fiscalini Ranch down there as well.
A working ranch?
Yeah. Mhm.
It's a large wooded area, much bigger than Strawberry Canyon and Camp Ocean Pines that goes to the south. It's a very large area.
That's San Marino, I think.
Well, there's some of it that is not, it's privately owned, but not built upon. And it's in our sites.
I bet.
I heard the University of California, the state owns some of it.
Well, Rancho Marino is, UC Santa Barbara has a contract with them for that as a nature study place.
Rancho Marina,
Yeah.
I think it was Rancho Marina.
Who is, well, it used to be called the Sibley Ranch. And let's see, and then, yeah. Oh, and before that, Getty, owned by members of the Getty family. But, I'm sorry?
It's privately owned, it's privately owned.
It's privately owned, but it is leased to the University of California under some terms. There's a contract. But beyond that, I don't know the legalities of it.
Wayne, what's gonna happen, the green space just took over that little section that's next to the Chinese temple by the post office, where the unhoused people need to vacate soon. What will you do with that?
You're talking about down near the post office?
Yes.
The end of the dead. Okay, CCSD is the property owner.
They're the ones. It's not green space. Okay. Oh. For the what?
Okay, you might want to let people on Zoom know, that area, and Wayne, if you could tell them that area was sold, because I don't think they heard Dawn. That area was sold to who? Historical Society, and they're gonna place the little jail that we've got.
Right, the little jail that's near the Pine Dorado grounds is going to be moved to that site.
CCSD.
In the 90s, when I moved here, they were working on a project to develop pitch pine canker resistant trees. Was that successful, and are the new trees you're planting pitch pine resistant?
It turned out that trees can get pitch canker, but not die. So that has turned out to be the salvation of the forest.
In the 1990s, there were people actually saying in 20 years they're all going to be gone.
Right, there was a projection of 85% death rate, yeah.
Yay.
From what, I went to a very interesting seminar on treescapes 3 or 4 years ago, and they were talking about the challenge of climate change on the trees because of the extended growing season and so on. Did they do anything genetically to the trees that were planted to make them more drought resistant, or?
Not that I'm aware of. Unless, well, I don't know what they're doing in the Southern Hemisphere, because they got a lot of science going into that. But I'm not aware of that. Doesn't mean it isn't happening.
Right.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.